Hello, folks. We are hopefully live and broadcasting. I'm JoJo. I'm, not hosting. What is it?
Sub-host.
Sub-host.
Facilitating.
Facilitating streaming today. Today we're going to have a presentation called Vite Routing by Kyle. And he'll go into that more soon, but we are the Utah Stack.js meetup, and this is everyone here. Say hi, everyone. Okay, and people can wave. Do we want to do some introductions, or maybe we'll start this? I just introduced myself. All right, you're up, Caleb.
I'm Caleb Birkenbrack. Been coming here for a while. I'm a JavaScript developer, mainly front end with Vue. Vue is cool, better than React.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's me.
I'm Manuel. I'm a junior full stack developer currently, so I'm just kind of learning the ropes on the back end. I'm pretty decent on the front end, and yeah, I've been coming here for a hot minute and trying to stay up to date with stuff and learn more stuff. Yeah.
I'm Todd. I'm a developer, I guess. I just started a new job at Cruise. I'm presenting next month on dgraph, so everybody come. And yeah.
Nice.
I'm Spencer. I'm also a developer. I just come here to learn about front end stuff.
Awesome. My name is Travis Barney. I work here at Vivint. I help host the meetup, just pick up the pizza and make sure people don't get too unruly. I'm a front-end developer, mostly a little bit of back-end, a little bit of operations. I also like Vue over React. Yeah.
All right.
Justin Jameson. I am a software developer at Unique. I work with Kyle. Just here to check out his presentation, which I'm sure will be awesome.
All
All
right.
right.
Well,
You got the man of the hour.
you'll hear more about me, but I'm a software developer at Unique as well. I'm not as brave as some to claim front end, but I could dabble in it and make things do things.
Awesome.
But yeah, I guess we've kind of already covered this, but this is just a little more about me. I focus more on how money is moved throughout a site, how we tax people, things of that nature. But outside of tech, I enjoy playing games, painting miniatures, and since it's summer, you have to enjoy the outdoors, or you're not living up to summer.
Have you been 3D printing your own miniatures?
Not yet, but I want to eventually. But yeah, before we get into the actual routing of Vite that's built into the awesome platform, you have to know somewhat of what Vite does and its goal. So Vite means quick in French. So if you think about it, there's probably a reason they gave Vite the word Vite as it ties to the French meaning, probably because it's pretty quick, pretty fast. And so like they implemented hot module replacement really fast, and it's by default. So anytime you change a component, the whole page doesn't reload, just that component reloads. Out of the box, you have TypeScript support on the front end. And when it goes to the browser, it's obviously compiled. And then there's a full suite of plugins for Vue, Angular, React, whatever framework you want. And if there's one that they didn't produce. The community probably has produced something. There's some that allow you to do server-side rendered Vite, which is pretty cool. But those are community plugins, so it's not like the actual developers made them.
Wait, isn't all Vite server-side rendered?
There's client-side and server-side parts of Vite.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So you like if you build your React app, your React code is compiled and then it's client-side rendered. It's delivered to the client and then rendered there. But all your config, all your things of that nature are server-side rendered. And that's what makes Vite routing so awesome, because it's on the server. But I'll get to that later. So basically, to make a Vite app, you just create, it's just npm create Vite latest whatever. My app could be whatever app title you want. And then it just says, please pick a template. And it's like JavaScript or TypeScript. And then you're like vanilla or React or Vue or whatever. And if you don't want to pick one of those, you could just pick vanilla and then go in into the config and assign your own plugin and install it yourself from the community. It makes things pretty easy if you just pick one of the templates, because it pretty much gives you a full app. From there, then you start developing the app. Just make your app however you want it, and then before you build it, you want to give it some configuration parameters. Whether that's how your server runs, like you could, by default, it's localhost 5143. You could go into the server options and change it to 3000, so it's more like Webpack, or you could change it to some other obscure number you want. You could change your other server parameters, and then you have build options, which is where your build directory gets put. That's where routes get assigned, and kind of from there you have more parameters, and there's like a full on website with Vite. It's on here, the vitejs.dev/config. It has all the parameters they allow in the define config function. So yeah, I'm going to show some code examples. So for the first one, it's just a basic React app. Pretty much what it does is it just says Vite routing. This is a basic app to demonstrate routing, and then dependent on the path, it just tells you what your path is. So if we just try some random path like hello, that page doesn't exist because in your build you never said hello is a page. But if you go into the config, and here I wasn't really creative, I was just like page 1 and page 2 are my routes. But if you come in here and you wanted hello to be a route, you would first create an HTML page and just do name it hello.html, make it like a normal HTML page. You could put whatever HTML you want in there as well, and then mount your React app or your whatever app onto it. And then you'd come in here, and here is where you define the route. Obviously main is probably always going to be your index. HTML, everything else, it doesn't actually matter if page 1 route and page 1.html tie to each other, but it would be kind of confusing if you don't do that. So here you just kind of resolve it, saying the root, so the first part of your URL / the path to that file will map to this route. And so here page 1 is defined to hit page 1.html. And then here's a few other options I gave it, like server ports. This one I kind of like React, so I decided to make it a React app for me. Here's the rest of the config. When you follow a template, pretty much all this is given to you. But yeah, so if we go back to this app and change it from hello to page 1, it works perfectly fine. And it's like your current path is page 1. And literally the component is really simple just because I wanted to show kind of the basic aspect. But yeah, so that's all it does. Is for every HTML page it loads this component. So that's kind of the basic idea, is you could have it configured where each HTML page renders a single component no matter what route. And you could have JavaScript logic in there that depends on what your component will be. But then if we go to this app, this is individual app for individual route. So what that means is each route you hit is pretty much a full-on different React app. So there's no cross-page, cross-component sharing. So you do have a downside of that, but you are siloed, and this page knows what this page knows, and no other page knows it, and you're secure because it can't be, other pages don't talk to it. And you're not passing data back and forth. So that's kind of a downside, but a pro depending on what you're trying to do. So the same idea, I wasn't creative and gave cool names, but if we do hello here, it crashes because I didn't open up that route. But if we look at the app, so this is pretty much the same. Everything's the same on the config side. It's just the way the HTML is now rendered. I'm pulling in, instead of /source/main, I'm pulling in app1/main.jsx, and so it's pulling in just that app. And a pro to doing this is you could do directory mapping, or you could do whatever mapping you want for your pages. And then since they're individual apps, you could use something like React Router or whatever other route manager you want to manage within that scope. And you won't have conflicts with others because you're within that. But the problem with React Router, when you add it to this, is now you're adding client-side rendered routing and server-side rendered routing. And that's kind of a pro of Vite routing this. It's all server-side. When you build the app, the deployment server knows, oh, okay, here's a route, and I'll serve you this route when you hit this page, whereas with React Router, it's you hit the page and then you go /blah blah blah. It's like, okay, let's ask React what this is, or React what this route is, and it takes you there. Whereas Vite, it's already known. So yeah, so basically, if I go here and do /app/1, it routes me to app1. And yes, I wasn't really creative on what the components looked like. That wasn't what I was trying to work on. And pretty much it's just basic React code in here. Yeah. So I showed you how to use JavaScript inside of a component that allows you to conditionally render how your apps route, and also having individual apps that are tied to individual routes. There's this one part of it that gets kind of complicated, and but it gets really powerful because you can define what routes you want and let React figure out what components to render based on the routes you have. So here, it actually looks different. There's no resolver in the config. But everything else is already there. The resolver actually lives in this routes.js file. That's kind of to mimic what languages like PHP has. They have a routes.js file in some of their frameworks, like Laravel or Cake or whatever. You have a routes.php. Here you have a routes.js. But since it's JavaScript, you have more freedom of saying, I want to export all this stuff. And that's where you create your resolvers. And pretty much the resolver is saying, like, make this route for me. So in here, that's where you're saying main is mapped to index.html. Page 1 is page1.html. And then also, just to keep all the resolves and the routes, I put in the root and the outer in here. You could put that in the config and it would be the same. But here, if let's say you have a 70-page app that you want to be a Vite app, if you put it in your config, that would be pretty long config because each HTML page needs their own route. So, but if you do this method, it's all concentrated here and all your other config goes somewhere else. If you even get more configs there, you could just split them up from there. But here is where I decided to do all the resolves. Just don't let the config not know what the resolve method is from path, and just let this file know. And so that's the way I define the routes. But if we want to define the way to connect the whole app together, instead of doing a layer instead of having app or main talk to HTML and let that handle all the routing, or have it be this app or this HTML page knows this app, just this app, I made a router React app. So what this does is you just go in here and you define all the paths you want. And I just used switch cases because it made the path simpler. You could do ifs, you could do whatever's you want. But here you just do that. And if you see the slash page and the slash page or slash page one and slash page one.html, that is needed because if you look at how the Vite routing works, is it's in the build step. When you're doing this, and when you do npm run dev for your Vite, by default, Vite just is like, okay, let's have index. Let's just have the index page be the main page, and let's all the routes will map to that. Even if the route doesn't exist yet, we'll just say, yeah, you could hit that component. But if you put the .html in, you could force it to go, oh, when I talk to this HTML page on your dev environment, I want to load this. So pretty much, when I hit one of those routes, it loads a component. When I hit another one, it loads a different component. And then this way, since all this thing is doing is controlling the routes of the app, you could have cross-app communication between the whole system and just let the app do its thing. And then all this does is just manage what routes it is. This is pretty much recreating what React Routing does. And you need this handy dandy little guy here, pretty much saying after the slash, or everything in your URL slash what's after this. And so if we look at this, it's like this is an index page, and if you do page 1, it hits it. If we do page 1.html, it does the same thing. But as I showed on the other ones, if we do hello, it crashes because Vite hasn't whitelisted that route yet.
Does Vite have like a 404 like setup you can do?
Yes. So I didn't take time to do that, but yeah, you could go into the configs and just like with Webpack, you could have like the 404 fallbacks. You could do the same thing. That's just in the config options and just say this, or you could have, yeah, you could just have it render a 404 page for you.
Just make sure your 404 is not mislabeled as an error page.
Yes. The other thing to note too is depending on where you deploy it, you could also just have a 404 page on that deployment system. Like Netlify, you could say this is my 404 page, and if you deploy your Vite app there, it's like, okay, here's the 404 page, and it renders that instead of this ugly thing. But this is the default from Netlify. So there's 2 ways you could do it. And so, and then like the rest of this is just basic React. I could give it parameters of whatever and pass it through and just let the router pass things around, or let the components talk to the components, because it's all still one app. It's just, this is what's telling what paths are. Instead of using React router, you're using this guy, which allows you to, you still have somewhat client-side rendered in this situation because this is rendered on the client, but Vite already knows, oh, these pages exist. We don't have to go, like with React router, you don't have to go look up, do I know what this page is? And then from there, move on and map to that component. And then, any questions?
What were your biggest pain points?
I tried doing a conditionally rendered router, and that didn't work. I'm still going to work on it, but
Conditionally, like based on what? Do you have an example?
So I'll show you what I have. It's not working right now because I ran out of time, but so here, this was before I came up with the idea of doing that routes.js. So I was trying to like break this up as much as I could. So what I was trying to do was you just come in here and you do this. But the idea that I had was here, have these. So main will always map to index. If you don't, that would be weird. Vite won't complain, but it would just be kind of weird. But just all these lists, I was trying to get it to be an array that includes this, and then it maps that, and it conditionally creates what routes you have based on what arrays you give it, or HTML pages you give it here. And then inside of the router itself, route manager, here's the list of pages that exist and the list of components or apps that I want to render. And then here, based on the path, it just does a loop to try figuring out what component in this array to render on a given instance, and if it can't find one, then it returns the index app or the main app. But yeah, I came across some bugs there, so I'm still trying to refine how that works.
So you said one of the benefits of using this as opposed to just doing all your routing on the front end is you can catch like 404 pages earlier. You don't have to serve up the entire React app, load it in the browser, and then only that doesn't realize, oh, I don't know about this route. Right?
Yes.
Is there another benefit to like not serving up the entire app bundle? Like, can it do some kind of like selective bundling to have like a separate bundle that it serves up for page 1 versus page 2, but from within the same app? Like if they're not separate apps, can you? I don't know. Does Vite do something like that?
That's a good question.
So same, like maybe your entire app, like a traditional single page app would be like 5 megabyte bundle or something. And page 1 only uses 3 megabytes of that, and page 2 only uses 1 megabyte. Could you have it just serve up the 3 and 1 respectively when those pages are requested?
There's probably a way. In the options, I don't know it. But there's tons of options, and there's a huge Vite community that someone probably figured out how to build that. But with your point, if you once you hit a 404, you're not waiting for the whole app to be served up and hit a 404. It's Vite knows, oh, this page doesn't exist. Okay, here's a 404, and the bundle is small. But depending on how you configure your options, there's probably a way to just do parts of it.
I haven't done it exclusively with Vite, but I've used Astro before, which uses Vite, and Astro is able to output per page, bundles. So I do think there is a way, not solely in Vite, very close to Vite, that you could do it.
I think it's for each entry point that you define. Like you point it to an HTML file, and it's, well, I don't think it needs to be an HTML file. I think it has something to do with the entry point. Because you can define a couple of them, but then I was thinking, like, how does that work with the dynamic loading, or you can like load it at runtime? Wow.
My question was with the routing that you, like, it was client-side routing, right? The client-side routing thing that you did, that you said was like an alternative to React routing. What was the advantage of doing it that way versus React router? What was the thing
This
you
one?
said? I didn't really understand that part. Yeah.
So with this, all your routes are already defined on the server. This is just telling you what component to render depending on your route. But the other advantage is, since it's all HTML based, let's say page 2, I want to have a different metadata tag than page 1. I don't have to do fancy JavaScript and go into the header or the head and just say, if it's this path, put this metadata tag, I just go into the HTML page and I add it. And boom, now only that HTML page has it.
Like you're saying like the HTML page of like the page1.jsx or the index.jsx or one of those ones, or
One of those, like the actual, like if I want this guy to have totally different metadata tags or have different styles or whatever than any other part of the app, but I want it to still be within contained, I could just, this is HTML, I could just throw whatever HTML I want in there.
oh, okay.
But then it still works like a React app. It's still on Vite. It's just the HTML that's loaded, preloaded the React app. It's Sorry.
Do control sooner
Interesting.
in the process instead of waiting till everything's loaded.
Yeah.
So Vite is a build tool. It's not a runtime tool, so it's not running on your server while you're serving the pages. It's what it outputs that dist directory, and so based off of like those separate index entry points, or you could do import lazy loaded import statements, and those will all code split. And that's what breaks down your bundle. Maybe what we could do is pull up like your editor or something and actually run one of these builds and then look at the dist directory, what it spits out.
That's a good idea.
Do I have them on this computer? No, I do not. One sec.
He's gonna
Don't unplug it.
Oh, no.
I'm gonna go get it.
Yeah.
The way I'm sharing it is not
No,
through
Jack.
it's through Jitsi.
It's up there.
Okay. I'll,
So you might need to drop out of that Jitsi and then join on the other one.
stop sharing. Let's go here. Why is it black now?
No,
That's
it's
fine.
trying to do
You
things.
might need to change your resolution or your mirroring
Or maybe use
Twist
the
it
actual
slightly to
Mac
the
adapter. Maybe that would work better.
Then it'll line up. No.
I just have to be here for sure. Call it magic. Yeah, buddy.
Did you share on Jitsi? Okay, you're getting it. Never mind. Sweet.
Cool. Okay, so just
Yeah, just run like the,
npm run build on one of these
Yeah.
guys.
you should use the terminal that's baked into VS Code. Go back over to VS Code and then type command backtick. Maybe
Or
control
tilde
back.
or what?
There
Yeah,
you go.
there you
Now you've got it just right in the same screen.
Friendly terminal.
I am making super efficient.
Yeah, so you'll notice that there isn't a build or a dist directory yet, but after he runs this, whatever you better configure it as your dist directory.
You probably don't
So
even
yeah,
darn about that.
so it's one main JS bundle with 3 pages. Do you have like a couple of different components inside of like one of those, like we could lazy load a component?
Yes. Where do I? This one.
So like, let's say, let's make like a components directory or something like that, and then in your source, and then just like foo, and then have one of those pages import that component. Sorry, I don't need to.
You could probably do it
No, this is good.
right here.
Yeah.
I'm
You could
gonna-
dynamic, or if you put those import statements into other ones in the cases, can't you?
Yeah,
Oh, true.
but yeah, let's, in like page 1, let's import foo.
Oh,
You use require statements. We could actually lazy load the whole component. So down in
Wait.
your template,
You're using export, so use import.
Yeah,
Not required.
Well, how do you do?
So type import space.
foo
Foo, yeah.
from components. Yeah.
And then space, yeah, there you go.
Well, that's how you would.
From,
So yeah, this will still, doing it this way, it'll still be part of like the pages bundle, and we can demonstrate after that, to split it out, so it's like, lazily loaded.
If it's spelled correctly.
I think it's freaking out because you don't have the end, quote.
is the editor trying to be too helpful?
You just don't have anything to say through, don't you?
Yeah, we'll fill out foo in a minute.
I am food, fear
Sweet. Best component of all components.
One component to rule them all.
Very useful.
Oh, not the goo component. That one is
We're not quite ready for that one.
That one is not the good one.
It's very sticky, hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
So now the dist,
Okay.
still
Oh, wait,
has,
that's weird.
it's all just bundled into main still, right? So let's,
What's
Yeah.
weird?
Wait.
Why
So
is it in
did
roots?
you run it?
Oh, was it always in roots?
Yes,
Oh, okay,
because I have 4
There-
React apps in this
Oh,
one.
almost different
Perhaps is one of the
projects.
examples.
Okay.
Yeah.
So comment out your import statement there, and change it, like how you were kind of doing it before, do a const before,
Yeah, that's what I thought you
okay.
were.
Okay.
and then, foo equals, a function. Or, lambda function or whatever. just
Oh,
the
arrow function.
Arrow function,
Oh, okay.
and then, have it say import, and then that path. I think
I
actually.
think you
like,
need
import is
the
already- Yeah, you
parentheses.
could probably just do the import just right at the top, right?
I don't think you can do imports
You have to do it.
traditionally.
So instead of,
It's a function, it's a,
yeah,
it's a
so
import.
use import as a function, and the path will be the argument in the
Yep,
function.
I remember
Like
doing
that, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Originally.
And with the curly brace, you'll need a return statement, so.
Or you could just return import.
Yeah, if you get rid of the curlies, it's an implicit return. So now that should be, now build that, and I think it should, code split that import out. Yep.
Ah, cool.
So why did it do it that way when you did it that way, but not the other way
So
before?
that import function is a helper that asynchronously loads the content. And so rather than, you want it to code split, so it's like a split point. Like if you're import statementing it, it's kind of just part of the whole bundle.
So,
I'm not good at explaining it.
so I guess back to Todd's question.
It's just, it's a way that's known to Vite to look for that, to split things.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Is it
JavaScript, I
Vite?
think.
I think it's
Yeah.
modules.
Oh, okay. Huh.
And you could put that in
So I
there.
guess back to Todd's question, you could do lazy loading and then pick out the bundles. Like if I were to do this type of idea for each one of these guys,
Mhm.
you would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, try it.
Huh. I'm trying it right now on mine, and it's not working.
You don't have everybody's
Right.
brains on it, bro.
Maybe the top level routing stuff can't be lazily,
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know why it's not. It's still putting it all in one big file. If I'm doing, I don't know.
So normally it would put it all into main dash, big old hash thing,
Yes.
but now it will split it
Theoretically.
into a main and into its own food one,
Oh,
Yeah.
which is advantageous for some reason.
Because it's bundle sizes.
Nice.
Oh, okay. So you're trying to make it not one big old bundle, you're trying to split it into two things?
Yes.
Okay.
And if, with this concept, based on your route, for example, now, I didn't do it for every route, but now when you hit index versus page one, index right now is trying to pull in everything, whereas page one is lazy loaded.
What does the HTML look like for page one now?
Yeah, wait,
Now that it's
show us what this is.
So it's still loading main. Does main have conditions in it now? I mean, of course, it's like minified and. Just find the condition in there.
It's not that hard.
Ah, there you go. That's how it's getting loaded down. Very cool.
Yeah, Vite's awesome because it's like so configurable. You can build single page apps with client side routing. You can do server side rendering apps where it pre-renders all of your index HTMLs with it. Very configurable, very fast.
How old is Vite?
About 2021-ish,
Okay.
2020.
I think I first heard about it about a year ago, so.
Yeah, it's still really young, but it's taken over Webpack. Webpack
It's,
is the
yeah,
best.
it's
It's
young,
the
but it's
fastest
everywhere.
growing package I've ever for like downloads.
I feel like, I don't know, my limited conception of it is that it's an easier Webpack.
Pretty much,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And it's fast.
I-
I
Nobody would-
personally hate Webpack. so-
Nobody would qualify Webpack as easy. So,
Yeah.
Well, the other nice thing, well, I've never seen people break out Webpack configs, but the other nice thing is with this, you have this guy, or no, this guy, that since it's just vanilla JavaScript, you just say, let's import the routes.js file. Okay, let's pull that in. And then you just have those configs there, so you just break it up. So if you're trying to change minor things, you can break it up as small as you want into your JavaScript, and you just have all your config throughout instead of this giant, like, a couple hundred line Webpack config.
which you can do with Webpack.
Yeah.
But Vite does it fast.
Yes.
'Cause
Did,
it
did,
uses,
did Vite take like all the many configuration properties of Webpack and simplify it?
It would have taken
Or not really?
roll-ups.
Yeah, roll up. It's taking a bunch of stuff from. It's using roll up. It's not like it didn't reinvent roll up. It's using other.
What's rollup?
It's what's doing like the bundling of things.
And then it also uses ES
build.
bundles as well, or ES build, yeah.
Rollup, I think, was originally an alternative to Webpack. Am I wrong? And, but it's about on par speed-wise with Webpack on whatever, Evan, you did for Vite. Like sidestep some of its slowness.
So what he did, so Vite uses ECMAScript modules, so it's just directly importing from the browser your code. Webpack, I believe, was transpiling everything first before it imported it or got into the browser. So it was having to do a transpile step every time you saved. You'd save, transpile everything, and then pull that all back into the browser.
That-
Whereas Vite just skips that transpile step.
That's why it allows you to use hot modular replacement by default.
Yeah, because all it's doing is just switching a URL, like in the script tag, it's just switching out the URL, their string that's got
Yeah, like if we,
It just has like the rounded number at the end, but it just changes every vote. Yeah, that would be a lot faster. I feel like my experience with hot module reloading is that it works for a bit, and eventually it's gonna break, and you have to reload the page anyway.
Yeah, that's, you get some weird state or something.
Yeah, does using native modules solve that?
I don't know. It's
Okay.
probably different every app because, well, for me, it's been like weird states where like a file is like loaded at a weird time and then something else isn't loaded in time. So it's like a weird grace condition with when the stuff is actually pulled in for the browser. But it's easy to just control part.
I've always thought or suspected that it has to do with the cache busting because of how hot module reloading does it. Is it's basically sending a new file name with the data and being like, here's your new page one dot whatever, but it's like page one dot ABCD 1 2 3 4, and then like when it needs a new one, it's D E F
Yeah.
5 6 7 8 like.
Cache break.
Yeah, so it breaks it, but I think over a while, it's still got all of those in the cache, and it just like poops out at a certain point, and then like you really need like a hard refresh type of thing to like clear all of that buildup. At least that's been my theory. I don't
Is it
know.
like built in like garbage collection or anything like that, or just clearing up the cache?
My interpretation is that it's more like you click through several different state flows, and your stuff that's in memory may be dependent on like, oh, you hit this thing and it loaded that component, and then you refresh that component because you saved the file, and it's not necessarily wired up to know that.
Yeah.
Something along those lines is the issues that I've kind of seen, but.
And if you've got a store, like I'm trying to think in React terms, but I don't know.
Redux?
Yeah, like a Redux store. That could be in its own JavaScript file, and it's being imported into components, and you change one of those components, and like your store isn't going to react to that component being re-imported in. So that's where you can get some weird store saying this, but the component state is not in sequence.
But it's still
Oh,
safe,
interesting.
like 99% of the time, it's just like instantaneous
Yeah.
visual changes, so.
I wonder if I've ever seen that. You know.
And now there's what's the one that Vercel made? Turbo Pack, which is supposed to be even faster.
So there's a cool feature in Chrome DevTools where you can go to the Sources tab and you can find your JavaScript file, and if you're doing like very basic web development with no build tools or anything, you can just find your JavaScript file and you can make a change there, and you can configure it to like link to your file system and say, here's the directory my server is serving up, and here's where it is on my file system. And then when you make the changes in the source directory, it will reflect immediately in Chrome because you're doing it in DevTools, but it also writes to your source files on your disk.
Awesome.
Interesting. Except, you can't do that using like Webpack and minified files and source map. At least I've never figured out. I guess theoretically you could do it with source map somehow, but
you would have to write a minified JavaScript.
yeah. So I'm wondering if that might be more on the table if you're not.
Yes, modules are fairly new, and so that's why Vite was able to strike at an opportune time, because it's delivering you the ES module file, not your compiled JS output. And so you could make tweaks there, and it would probably still map to your source file. I don't know.
Unless you're like, because how would it handle like view components in JSX? Because that's got to get
Kind of
transpiled.
source map stuff, like I don't know. Yeah.
I guess any JSX would have to be transpiled.
Anything
So.
like not just JavaScript.
What you should do instead is like have like the edge browser plugin in your VS Code, so you can still just have your browser in your editor instead of your editor in your browser.
I'm gonna go get more pizza.
But yeah, there are some pretty cool, I've dabbled with them a little bit, but you can do like edge plug, like, so you've got all your debugging tools and everything just rendering right in your one VS Code screen instead of the jump between.
Are you saying Microsoft Edge or like Edge servers in the cloud?
Microsoft Edge has some pretty good
Oh, okay.
VS Code
Okay.
debugger
Oh.
integration.
I didn't know
I
that.
mean, I know that with Node.js, I know they had that one where you like if you run your Node.js with a specific command, you can pull up your Node.js console in the Chrome browser. I don't know
The
if-
debugging tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, so initially, like, Node like version 6, they had the -debug flag
Mhm.
that was a very difficult to debugger. And then Node 8, they added in inspect one, which is like the usable one, and it was actually the Chrome dev team who
Yeah.
built that. And so like the Chrome Node.js debugger is like the original Node debugger. But it works really well. But when you run it with the inspect flag, basically it has like a 9312 or some port that it listens on. And then when you open up DevTools in Chrome, it will search for, is there something listening on this port that I can connect to? And then it will pop up the little node icon there that you click on that and opens up and it connects into your running node process.
Yeah.
So, but that's the same way that like VS Code or WebStorm or whatever will connect to node debugging as well. It's just over the network.
Yeah.
Remote debugging is what you'll see it called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to have a really hard time with Vite, you can try to proxy the dev server. I didn't figure out how to do it, but at my work, our dev environment is a messy, disgusting VM that you boot with Vagrant, and I was trying to get a Vite set up so like you're developing on your host, not on the guest OS. But the guest OS has a certain domain name, and if you want like cookies and everything to stay the way they are, you have to like proxy your local, like the code running on the host through the VM and then back out into your browser. And I was having a real hard time getting the dev server to work so that like hot modules or hot module reloading was working. And I couldn't figure it out. But yeah. Because it was doing something with like, it uses WebSockets to like pull stuff in, or at least I'm not sure how exactly, but there are WebSockets shooting off. And I was having to like proxy them because our VM has to serve everything over HTTPS, and then I was having to like manage a whole bunch of certificates, and then there's like secure WebSockets that I was proxying, and I might have been doing something completely wrong, but that was a pain point with, maybe not so much with Vite, now that I think about it. Maybe it's our VM's fault. Never mind.
Interesting.
Well, maybe we'll wrap up here the stream. So thanks, Kyle. And I guess we'll do, or try to do AJ's wrap-up thing. So thanks everyone for watching and joining in. I guess we didn't have any chats this time, but make sure to check us out next time. We are the second Thursdays? Third Thursdays of the month? Yeah. So yeah, check us out and see you all later.